So as you can probably tell from watching this video, I'm an artist. I've been drawing for most of my life, but I really started taking it seriously in high school. Back then it was mostly fan art with the occasional nature study thrown in there. I did pretty well, coming out with an A star, and when I moved on to college, I started developing my own artistic identity rather than just drawing things I liked. Looking back, college was probably the best educational experience I've had as an artist. The tutors were supportive, open-minded, and genuinely interested in helping people improve. They worked with me to refine my technique, encouraged me to experiment, and gave me a realistic idea of what pursuing art as a career might actually involve. After my A-levels, I stayed on to do a foundation diploma, which was actually based in a little basement area that used to be a World War II bunker, which was pretty sick. The people around me were great as well. We all had different interests and opinions, but there was a sense that everyone wanted to improve and help each other. There were plenty of debates, plenty of laughs, and a few nights out along the way. But most importantly, I felt seen. The tutors understood what I was trying to achieve and helped me develop my strengths rather than pushing me towards someone else's idea of what my work should be. That was probably the peak of my art education. Naturally, after that experience, I thought the next step was obvious. I needed to go to art school. Surely that would be the place where I would not only improve as an artist, but also learn how to navigate the art world itself. If there's one place that's supposed to prepare you for that, it's art school, you'd think. Well, as you've probably guessed from the title of this video, that wasn't my experience. Looking back, what frustrates me the most isn't that university challenged me or exposed me to ideas I didn't agree with, because that happens every day. The frustrating part is, after 3 years, a degree and a sizable amount of debt, I left feeling no more prepared for a career in art than I did when I started. Since graduating in 2021, I've spent years just trying to figure things out for myself, how to market my work, find opportunities, build an audience, and ultimately just trying to turn something that I've dedicated most of my life into a sustainable career. Instead, I've just found myself bouncing between hospitality jobs while just trying to work out what's coming next. And to be fair, the place I work now is decent. It's close to home, the people are sound, and it pays the bills. But it's not where I imagined I'd be after spending years studying fine art. Bouncing from hospitality jobs, it's not the best thing in the world, and it's left me in some pretty sticky financial situations in the past, which is probably a topic for another video. And I suppose the more I reflect on my time at uni, the more I start asking myself a simple question: what exactly have I paid for? I started in 2018, graduated in 2021 with a BA Honours in Fine Art and a respectable 2-1. So at first it was exciting. I was meeting people from all over the country with completely different experiences, backgrounds, and approaches to making art. I made friends across different courses, and most importantly, I met my fiancée, who was studying the same course as me. Being from Manchester meant I didn't really need accommodation, but I did spend a lot of time staying at her halls anyway. We mostly stuck together, but we were still open to getting to know people during the first year, obviously. But over time, we just started feeling more alienated from the course. There were plenty of students making work that revolved around politics, identity, controversy, and conceptual theory. And, don't get me wrong, that's their right. They can do whatever they want, whatever interests them. But I just didn't relate to anything like that. I just couldn't relate to them in general. And I think my own politics might have differed a little bit to theirs, so they might disagree with me and sort of be a bit funny, because I've seen it happen plenty of times to people. So the issue wasn't the work itself. It was more, the issue was that it often felt like these were the kinds of conversations the tutors were most interested in having, really. Meanwhile, artists like myself who were interested in storytelling, drawing, symbolism, fantasy, and narrative often just felt like I was operating on the fringes of these discussions. I wasn't expecting constant praise or special treatment. I just expected a bit more guidance, really. I wanted help developing my strengths and understanding how these strengths could translate into a career. Instead, I often felt encouraged towards areas of practice that didn't really interest me. One of those things that stood out was the emphasis on identity. Now, I'm half Pakistani, half English, and I was frequently encouraged to engage with that side of my identity, the Pakistani side I mean, through my work. Now, there's nothing wrong with artists exploring their heritage if that's something they're passionate about. The problem was that it wasn't what I wanted to make work about. Obviously I wanted to make work about fantasy, storytelling, blah, 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 what I've just said. I wanted to create worlds and characters and narratives. Yet I often came away feeling as though those interests were just less valuable than the work that engaged with political and social themes that the course seemed to prioritise more than anything else. Whether it was intentional or not, it just left me feeling disconnected from both the tutors and the course itself. And there was one incident that really summed up how I felt at the time. A field trip was advertised that my partner was genuinely interested in, actually, and she couldn't go because it was only open to the members of the BAME community, which basically stood for Black and Ethnic Minority Group, something like that anyway. It was just basically what they deemed to be anyone of ethnic minorities. And ironically enough, this term is no longer used due to it being seen as divisive and offensive, which is exactly what I proclaimed it to be at the time. What frustrated me wasn't the intention behind it, it was just the fact that the opportunities were being divided. She wanted to attend because she cared about the subject matter and but she wasn't eligible because she was white. It really wound me up. Like, I just didn't get it. So I emailed the head of department about it, and I was essentially told it was the result of decisions that was made by the student committee. So rather than actually holding a bit of responsibility and accountability for themselves, because he was the one who actually came up with it. He was the one who advertised this whole BAME community opportunities thing. So, coming from me, who is like their target audience basically, they just didn't want to hear it. So combined with everything else, it just reinforced the feeling that I didn't really belong there and they just didn't want to listen to me. So I also had a project that focused on people's obsession with scrolling on the phones and how it pulled them away from experiencing life and interacting with the world around them, that sort of thing. It was probably the closest I was willing to get to addressing a real world issue, because obviously I just prefer telling stories. I didn't want to talk about the real world. It's just not my thing. The only reason I did it was because I just thought it might be something the tutors would engage with, and it was something I was sort of interested in as well, obviously, but I just felt like I might get a bit more engagement with the tutors, which at the time I shouldn't have really done, because I should just stick to my guns and stick to what I want to do rather than trying to bend myself so that they can accept me. Shouldn't have done that. But yeah, the problem was like, even though I tried so hard to sort of do something they might engage with, the feedback quickly became focused on the fact that the drawings were based on photographs and whether I should have just taken a photo instead. There wasn't much discussion about the themes, the intent behind the work, or what the drawing as a medium might communicate differently. Before long, the conversation just swiftly moved on. So basically this is it was like a group critique. So they go around to everyone's studio and they'd like critique all the work. So yeah, they basically spent like 5 minutes talking about how my work was just photographs and how I should have just taken a picture rather than done a drawing of anything. Didn't talk about the themes or anything like that. They basically just moved on and spoke about someone else's work for about half an hour. So yeah, that was a recurring frustration, being sidelined so they could talk about what they clearly cared for more. And at this point you're probably thinking I'm a bit bitter about this one. I am a little bit, but I never expected every tutor to love my work, but I just expected them to engage with it. It's what we're all paying for after all. Good criticism isn't about telling an artist what they should make. It's about helping them make what they're already trying to create as effectively as possible, and not changing the work, actually developing it. Ironically, the best feedback I'd received came during my 3rd year, near the end. One tutor pointed out how I'd used symbolism and lines of sight to guide the viewers around the image, while still allowing them to draw on their own conclusions. They suggested to loosen parts of the work to make it more expressive and emotional, and it was practical, thoughtful feedback that directly related to what I was trying to achieve. Unfortunately, that tutor was only part of a small team study group that met a handful of times during COVID. Now, speaking of COVID, half my degree ended up being spent at home. To be fair, nobody could have predicted it. Staff and students alike were trying to adapt to a completely unprecedented situation. If I was now developing my work largely on my own, what I realised during that period was that artistic development is often a deeply personal process. The more time I spent working independently, the more confident I became in the kind of work I wanted to make. So art, at least for me, is a form of self-discovery. You don't always need someone holding your hand and telling you what direction to go in. Sometimes you just need a bit of freedom to follow your own instincts and discover what matters to you. What I did need, however, was practical guidance. Like a lot of artists, I had very little understanding of marketing, self-employment, pricing work, finding clients, applying for opportunities, building an audience, all that kind of stuff. That's where I feel fine art education failed me the most. Not because those things were never mentioned, but because they never felt central to the course. There was one guest lecture that has stayed with me over the years though. The speaker talked about applying for exhibitions, residencies and open calls, almost like a numbers game. You apply, get rejected, apply again, get rejected again, and eventually something lands. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Looking back, it was one of the few moments where I felt somebody was describing the reality of being a working artist. If I could redesign my own fine art degree, I wouldn't remove all the conceptual art, political art, performance. It's not my thing, but people should make whatever work speaks to them. But what I would change is the balance. I'd teach students how galleries operate, how artists actually earn money, how grants work, how to market themselves, how to build audiences, pricing work, negotiate contracts, and even this, doing stuff for social media on YouTube and Instagram, stuff like that. Because for all the discussions about theory and concepts, very little of my degree prepped me for what came next. The real challenge wasn't making the art, it was building a life around it. So my advice to anyone considering a fine art degree is simple. Ask yourself what you're hoping to get from it. If you're looking for studio space, experimentation, community and academic discussion, it might be exactly what you need. But if you're like me and you're looking for practical career skills and a roadmap towards earning a living as an artist, then you might need to look elsewhere, and you could probably develop a lot of these skills, as in the sort of technical aspect of it, on your own, because I have as well. I've tried to look back on this period of my life as objectively as I can, because I know there's still a part of me that's disappointed and bitter by how everything turned out. I don't have everything figured out. I'm still learning, I'm still improving, and still trying to build a future around the thing that I love doing. But despite university being a largely negative educational experience for me, the life experience I've gained from it was invaluable. Most importantly though, I met my fiance there, and that alone changed my life for the better. So maybe the degree wasn't what I hoped it would be, but as Oasis would say, don't look back in anger. Cheers for listening to this video, guys. I do appreciate it. I know it was a little bit of a rant, but I hope you might have been able to take a little something from it. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed my little drawing of Homelander here as well. I hope you all enjoyed the finale as well. I thought it was pretty decent. A lot of people moan about it, but what do you expect? It's a TV show and it's not going to be perfect. I thought it was pretty good. Yeah, we got Billy Butcher coming up on the other side of this drawing on the next video as well, so expect that coming up soon. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and any other topics you can think of, I'll talk about it. Yeah, I'd really appreciate it if you like, subscribe, comment, all that kind of stuff, and until next time, I will see you in a bit.